So we are going to write not just addition of two numbers, we can write complex programs which doesn't need any interaction on the servers. So this capability of certain programs which can execute on the client machine itself is called as client-side scripting. Is called as client-side scripting. So there are certain programs which run on the web server itself. Those programs are called as server-side scripting programs. There are certain programs which run on the client machine itself, called as client-side application programs or client-side scripting. So those languages which are required to make those programs on the web server are called as server-side scripting languages, and those languages which are used for creating programs on the client machines are called as client-side scripting languages. So a dynamic web page is a page that is generated by a website program or script, simple terms. Same way, whenever a request is made, first the request goes to the web server, it checks or looks up the extension. If it is able to find that the extension is just for a normal HTML page, means that it's a static. But if that HTML page is in combination with certain program, that means that program is there on the application server, the web server will try to find out which application server is needed. Like one application server here, there may be multiple application servers based on different business logic. Different criteria are there for which different application servers are required. Same way, when it comes for database server, at different locations, different database servers are present. So which server is to be interacted, what data from that server is to be taken, all that logic will be written on the application server side scripting program only. So once that is done, it will try to reply back with the compiled or generated HTML page back to the client. So this is the reality of dynamic web pages. In short, there are two types of pages. One is static and there is dynamic. When it comes for static, it's a simple HTML program that is created or generated by the web developer, and it remains the same irrespective of the input given to the file, irrespective of the number of times it has been accessed. But when it comes for dynamic web page, the web page changes depending on the input given by the user, depending on the number of times it has been accessed. For example, number of times for that particular part, we access our for example, nowadays cricket is going on, IPL is going on. When you see the web page of the scorecard, will you see the same score always? Always should it remain as zero or something static? No. It should give us the current score that is being run. So will there be any HTML developer sitting and writing thousands of times new web pages so that it can be given time by time, again and again? No. We require a dynamic web page for these type of requirements where a human being cannot do it. It should be done automatically by the system itself. So for that reason, we'll be writing dynamic web pages. So I hope this particular part was clear for everyone. Now we will go for types of web browsers. When it comes to types of web browsers, one of the dummiest web browser, I should say, I don't want to undermine it, but not so well versed for web development. This is the reality. That is in it was developed by Microsoft and is still maintained by Microsoft, but is not even used by them because they have moved for little advancement called as Edge browser. So this browser was little bit used up because it was coming as a default one along with the Windows operating system. But later on, there was one more web browser which is very brilliant one, very good web browser for web development researchers called as Firefox. Actually, these persons were the first ones who developed the web browsing. Web browser. There it was called as Netscape Navigator. Netscape was the company which developed it. And Navigator, for navigation, they gave that name Navigator as the web browser name. But later on, they changed it to Firefox. Mozilla overtook that company and Mozilla named it as Firefox. Apple, it always want to compete with that of Microsoft, or I should say, Microsoft competes with Apple, and it has created its own web browser called as Safari. All of these works fine. There is little change in their look and feel, their way of understanding of HTML code, and then putting it back into presentational format. That understanding of HTML code and putting it back into understandable format is called as a rendering of HTML page. But these three are well and good. There are few more, like Opera. It has got little features inside it, like setting of background of the page or something like that, but it is not well versely used for web development. कार्ड यूज कर कार्ड एक मिनट कैश भी है मेरे पास प्रॉब्लम नहीं है आप आराम से यूज करो कोई इशू नहीं सर so sorry for the lag. There are few more called as Chrome. Chrome is developed by Google, and this browser is a very highly effective browser, very widely used because of its simple look and feel, easy searching ability, and quick response time. But all these what I have listed here are having a drawback that in the web industry, once you create a website, due to some luring purpose, due to some crazy mind of people to learn more and more, to earn more and more, they will keep the advertisements, which will annoy us. We want to browse something, but some time or the other, a pop-up comes up trying to distract our mind, and we don't want like that particular advertisement. There will be some advertisements which will be genuine, but some majority of them will be illicit type of advertisements which will corrupt your system and your mind. So we don't like those advertisements to pop up. So we will install a plugin which is suitable for all these four, called as ad blocker. But prior than that, there is a browser called as Brave, which automatically removes each and every type of advertisement. 188 654. So I prefer personally to use Brave browser, Brave. It removes all the advertisements and displays the neat content which I want to browse. But certain websites are there which will, if the web developer is not a good developer, they will not be able to sense out what type of area should be used for advertisement, what type of tags are to be used, commands are to be used for advertisements, what are not to be used for advertisements, and they will mix it up. So those type of websites will not work on Brave. We'll be trying it on the Chrome and we'll try to rectify that particular problem. But out of my experience of 3 to 4 years of Brave, not a I can say just 2 to 3 times I faced a difficulty, but later nothing I have faced as a difficulty. That's a brilliant software, Brave. Now, this was a case of web browsers. Web browsers are the client machines which will make a request to the web server. Now, let us try to see how many different web servers are there. These web servers, as the browsers, different companies has given their own product, their own software. Like Microsoft has given Internet Explorer, Firefox has been given by Mozilla, Safari has been given by Apple. Same way, we have got one web server which is very widely used by the web developers, and it is one of the basic things which you will be learning throughout your life, called as Apache. This Apache is a company name. It has given various versions of web servers. One of the versions, which is open source, which we can download freely and use it, is Apache Tomcat. Tomcat is the web server name, and Apache is the company which has developed it. So we will say Apache Tomcat. When we come into the 9 unit, I will make you to install it onto your systems and try to practice on it. I will try to explain in detail what is Apache Tomcat at that location. Same thing was given by uh, Microsoft, called as Internet Information Server. This Internet Information Server was developed by Microsoft, but it is not so widely used as that of Apache, because it is not open source. First thing, that means we have to pay for using it. It doesn't comes free of cost. Nowadays they are giving it free of cost to try, but when you are using it in a company, you have to pay for it. That's one thing. Second thing, it is not as uh, quick in response as that of Apache. It's sluggish, it's slow. So no one prefers for IAS except for few of the companies which prefer Microsoft technologies in combination few with few security measures. So this is web server. There are few more, like for example, one of the web servers given by IBM is WebLogic. One of the web server given by Oracle is WebSphere. There are multiple. One of the web servers given by, at that time, Java, called as Sun Microsystems Company. That Java developers Sun Microsystem Company developed their own web server called as Glassfish. That's a funny name, but it's one of the web servers. So you have got various web servers, but out of them, few are to be learned, and we will be concentrating mainly on Apache Tomcat or Glassfish. Then coming on for server-side scriptings, as we have learned, are the server code or the programs which will generate for us the dynamic web pages, which will help us in generating it in combination with the dynamic database servers. So one of the programming languages for server-side scripting is ASP.NET. This ASP, Asynchronous Server Pages, was developed by Microsoft, and it was released much prior to .NET. It existed prior to .NET's existence, but later on it was combined along with .NET to create it as Asynchronous Server Pages .NET, ASP.NET. Second one was JSP, Java Server Pages, given by Java. PHP. This PHP itself is a full form. Some people say it, but some people even try to elaborate it by telling it as pre-processed hypertext programming. So this is one of the definitions given by various developers, but the actual reality is there is no elaboration for it, full form for it. But some of them, if they ask you in interviews, please don't keep that it doesn't has any full form. Just tell that it is pre-processed hypertext programming. It's one of the things to be get habituated with. Then we have got Adobe giving its own server-side scripting called as Cold Fusion. This was completely a commercial language. It's not free of cost. Whereas we can use JSP and PHP. It's open source. We can even change its code if we wish. We can write our own JSP and we can build and release it. But This cold fusion is not like that. ASP, since no one was going for .NET purchased versions, .NET Microsoft shifted their ideology and giving it as .NET Core nowadays, which is free and open source. But it has certain restrictions which are required to be understood. When time comes, we will be talking about that part. Like PHP, we had one more called as Ruby, which was also used very highly along with a language called as Perl. This Ruby and Perl were in combination used up, but they were not as efficient as that of JSP and PHP. JSP, it's one of the brilliant languages. I prefer Java a lot because it is open source. It's very highly secure. There is a lot of security mechanism followed in JSP, so we will be preferring that one. Then one of the languages which is being nowadays being taken as a boom word is buzzword is Python. Python as Perl, let me first talk about Perl. Perl was initially not meant for web development. It was meant for system programming. System programming means whatever operating system is running on our system, if I want to make any changes into the operating system, I have to interact in Perl. I have to write certain commands in Perl. So those changes were very brilliantly done using Perl language rather than that of the above languages. Same like that, there was one language called as Python, which was used for system programming mainly, but later on it was because of its ease of use and its easy syntactical nature and very small amount of code required to run big programs. This Python has been concentrated on for web development as well as for majorly data analytics. Data analytics is a different field which is now being looked on very highly by different professionals, but it's statistical. It requires mathematics and calculus. So these things are server-side scripting languages. So coming next, let us at least I hope there are 10 to 15 minutes left out. But let me just post till here. Is everything fine? Okay, fine. Coming on for web development itself, let us concentrate when I want to write any web page, create any web page from scratch because we don't have any knowledge about it. We are learning it, right? When we want to write any new web page, what are the things that we need to understand? So before we go for it, like if a, as I said earlier, anatomy is a medicine word. Let us first understand why we are using it here. Just imagine if any surgeon has to perform any surgery on a patient without knowing the patient's physical internal components functioning and linking of the components. Can he directly cut on and do the surgery without learning what is the human body composed of? No, it will be very big disaster. Same way, if a web developer has to build a web page without having a look on what the normal web pages will contain, then we cannot develop it. A human body cannot be modified a lot, but when it comes for web development, we are at a liberty to change as we wish. But there are certain things which we need to understand and we need to adopt them. So we'll be learning what this web page will be mainly composed of. So here we are having just 5 minutes left out. In this 5 minutes, I don't want to be in a hurry to go on. Let me keep this 5 minutes for the doubts. Does anyone has any doubts? They can raise it in the chat box. और
हाँ रिपोर्टिंग చేసిన ये अमाउंट कट हुआ क्या बेटा इसमें नहीं आया फिर एक बार देखो कुछ इसको वो है क्या
are there any
नेट बैंकिंग
doubts?
वगैरह है क्या उसको ओपन करके देखो क्या बेटा एक बार
Okay.
बैंकिंग ओपन करके चेक करो कि
Dynamic web pages are not normal web pages. They are not directly written word to word by the web developer. They are generated by the server program. This server program is needed because, for example, as I was giving an example of cricketing website. So when you have seen the IPL or some type of soccer or any type of gaming, you will find the score getting updated time by time in the web page. Some 5 seconds or 10 seconds, every time it will get refreshed and it will fetch the latest values. But whatever is being displayed there for score 10 or score 100 or something like that, those are different web pages. Will the people be doing, everyone be creating one new page for every score? No. So what will be the reality? There will be one application server. That application server will check what is this web browser requesting for. Is it just requesting for a normal HTML page? Or in addition with HTML page, is it requesting for some computational program to be running? That computational program will be saved on application server. So web server, upon sensing the web page requirement, it will interact with the web server. But the key point over here is, how does the web server come to know that there is some additional program to run along with the HTML page? No issues. How does the web server come to know it? It looks at the extension that was provided over there. Depending on the extension, it will determine whether this web browser was looking for a normal HTML page or was looking for an additional program. So if there is additional program to be executed, that program will be developed by the web developer, but this program will not be for direct HTML language program. It will be a program which will generate a HTML program for web server. But if that web program requires any data to be displayed, then it interacts with the web server, takes the data, compiles it into a web page, sends it back to the web server so that it can reply back. I hope I was able to answer your question. पावर सप्लाई है अभी से कमेंट भेजे तो नहीं जा रहा फिर ये सब पोस्ट नहीं हो रहा
नहीं आ रहा सर नेट में यूज कर रहा हूँ एक बार चेक करो
Okay, I can reply. Okay, we will have the class later on then. See you all in the next session.
मेरा क्लास ले लो सर